Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. It is Thursday, game week for the Denver Broncos in the preseason, at least, such as it is. I'm Sean Trotar. This is Anilo Pirro. Santa Club is off today. Anilo, thanks so much for joining us. Anilo, we'll sit down with Cody Rourke later in the program, talk a little bit about the game. I'll talk about the Broncos camp with Eric Goodman of Morning Drive as well. All that will come up over the course of the show. But here we are a couple days away from the Broncos' first preseason game, Anilo, and the energy in camp, I think, picking up a little bit this week. You're starting to see things look a little bit tighter. It is a game week such as it is. You're not doing a lot of game planning for the starters because they won't be in for all that long, obviously. And in the end, it doesn't matter. It is a practice game. But some of the intensity has picked up a little bit. It certainly looks more efficient and more effective. And what have you been feeling over the course of the week here at camp when you're talking about looking at either quarterbacks, the team at large, and the overall view of the Broncos at this stage, just a couple of days prior to their first game?
Well, a little bit of a tease for the segment that I did with Cody. That's going to be a straight preview of the preseason game. And one of the major talking points there was the excitement of just being able to see these guys in front of a different unit, right? Because I agree with you, Sean. It looks like things are picking up. It looks like the speed is getting up there, the tempo, all that good stuff. But I think we'll get our first real gut check of what this Denver Broncos team looks like. Is it going to be formidable? What is that going to look like when we get to the preseason and whatnot? But I did think it was interesting. I think it was Tuesday's practice. Sean Payton came out and said he was pretty disappointed with the energy.
Yep.
Disappointed with how just kind of the practice session went. Looks like it was a better day yesterday. We heard from the quarterbacks as well. And I know that there was some frenzy about that online about how the quarterbacks are being viewed and treated based off their status in the NFL and all that good stuff. But I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, you're starting to see things tighten up a little bit. We were just watching Jared Stidham throw some incredible angle routes here in the end zone, working on some stuff. I think it's all been par for the course for the most part. Excited to get to this preseason game so we can, see what they look like against another unit. And looks like they're running through their walkthroughs here right now. Or not, I don't know what you want to call it. What do you call this? It's not a walkthrough.
Well,
11 on 11.
You're working through your normal sort of a situational
70% speed.
Right. What Nathaniel Hackett called jog throughs.
Yeah.
A little bit like maybe the only thing that Nathaniel Hackett actually got right here in Denver in his time.
I still can't think. It still blows my mind at how bad that was.
It was only a chunk of the year.
And know what else is crazy? I saw this on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. The Jets really managed to win 7 games with Zach Wilson at quarterback, and he is fringe practice squad at this point.
I'm not even sure he's fringe.
It's crazy.
And then that's one of the reasons I think they're excited about the idea that Aaron Rodgers may return in whatever capacity.
Can I also say this one time? I was playing NCAA last night with my buddy.
Jealous?
And, it's hard, by the way.
Oh, I have it. I just haven't found any time whatsoever.
Yeah, that's like my unwind for the night.
There you go.
It's like I'll get done with the Locked On Rockies postcast. I'll play a game of NCAA.
14 years since you could vent that way when you were
basically.
6 or something?
Something like that. But I need to get the record straight because I don't know where the Broncos fans are getting this information. You know what my buddy tells me last night? I've been hearing Zach Wilson's looking pretty good at training camp. And I literally grabbed the microphone and yelled. And I was like, who the bleep are you talking to, bro? We're looking at Zach Wilson scrambling in 7-on-7 drills. I mean, look, I'm not trying to dog on the guy. Zach Wilson is a very distant third in this competition.
And the thing is, he always was. That's the part that shocks me is that people look at this and they believe it. And I get it. Some of it is that the mindset that we have in our sort of instant response thing, right? Like everyone has to have a take about something, everything they see, even though practice is just a tiny little slivers of an overall larger goal.
Right.
But there is this idea that Zach Wilson, because he is, well, let's be honest, the most experienced NFL starter in camp by
which is hard to believe.
Significant margin, by the way. A Wilson 33 career starts Stidham with 4. So yeah, but he was never in to start for the Broncos starting quarterback spot ever.
That move to me is Sean Payton being labeled as a quarterback guru, looking at a guy that was a top 5 pick that has all of the natural talent in the world.
And the physical talent jumps.
It's there.
You could see it. The arm strength, he has arm strength that is vastly superior to either Bo Nix or Jared Stidham. You can tell the physical ability when scrambling. He didn't really run during his time in college, but you see him out there. He might be faster than Nix and Stidham. The athletic ability is all there. And if you're Sean Payton, I liked the move simply because it cost you a conditional late rounder, right? And he's in his last year of his contract. He doesn't make a lot of money under the cap in this last year of his deal. You didn't extend him, so he's playing on a make-good deal. The rest of the league at this point doesn't have any real interest in Zach Wilson. So as long as you just kind of keep him around, keep him in your system for years, see what you think. The plan was always for Sean Payton to have some time with Zach Wilson, knowing that the new quarterback rules allow you to elevate your third quarterback from the practice squad every week and never have to expose him to waivers, because the league last year, I've talked about this all week, 66 quarterbacks started in the NFL last year. It's only 32 teams. That's 64 if it's 2 per team. So slightly over 2 per team last year. So the change now that basically you can have that third. So the Broncos now have 3. They didn't bring in a 4th. They just kept the 3. They knew what they were doing. The idea all along was Zach Wilson was going to be with Sean Payton for a year, be on the practice squad. Nobody was going to claim him off of waivers unless they were very, very desperate. And you see how it shakes out, because Jarrett Stidham is in a contract year. He makes $7 million this year, more than Bo Nix and Zach Wilson combined. So if Wilson looked amazing, you could make Wilson the backup. You could move on from Stidham. You could save $5 million on the cap and go from there. If Wilson didn't look amazing, you still keep him for a year. He's your third quarterback. You get a chance to work with him all year long. You see if that pedigree that made him the number 2 overall pick in the draft might be something you can use. And then hopefully, because he's only a couple months older than Bo Nix,
right?
The idea would be, if you're Sean Payton and George Payton, you look at it and say, all right, fine. We like what we got out of Zach Wilson. He's going to be our long-term backup. We like Bo Nix as our QB1. Now we've just kind of solved our quarterback room problem for the next 4 to 5 years, and neither of those guys will even be 30 by then. So that's the idea. But this was a dart. You just throw a dart at the board and you hope it hits, and that's what Zach Wilson always was. And anyone who told you otherwise was just misinformed, or they were national media that we heard of Zach Wilson because he started for the Jets, so we're going to make a deal out of it. He was never in the mix to start for the Denver Broncos, and he certainly wasn't the day after Bo Nix was selected.
No, absolutely. And here's the thing. This quarterback discussion is just nauseating, because we're looking for something to firmly grasp onto, right? If you maybe a little bit young.
Well, I mean, grasp onto this. Bo Nix will be QB1 as soon as possible.
Yeah, no,
exactly. End of story. That's what it's always been.
And maybe it's a little bit of a young reference for you, but like there's an episode of SpongeBob where Patrick is like, firmly grasp it. And he's trying to grab a stick, firmly grasp it. And it's like, that's what the Broncos fan is waiting for, to firmly grasp this quarterback competition and wrap it around their head and know who their guy is. Newsflash. This is what's going to happen. Jarrett Stidham is going to likely start the first preseason game.
Yep.
You're going to see Bo Nix get some time. Maybe you see Zach Wilson get some time.
Yep.
Broncos fans are going to go crazy, go bananas when they see Jarrett Stidham is the starting quarterback for the first preseason game after Bo Nix was considered the 3rd string quarterback on the unofficial depth chart. And all it's going to do is cause this pandemonium around the Broncos, with the fan base, with Broncos country, about Bo Nix isn't doing well.
He's not ready.
But at the end of the day, look at what Cody Works put out there. He has the lion's share of reps with the ones.
Right.
I believe 6 out of the last 9 practices,
correct,
maybe 7 out of the last 10 if we're keeping track here.
Mm-hmm.
Bo Nix will be the starter at some point or another. I think it's just due process that's playing out right now.
Week 1, barring something strange, it'll be week 1.
Yeah, I agree.
Because here's the drawback. If you start Jarrett Stidham, and I firmly believe you should start Jarrett Stidham in the first preseason game. I think you should. He's the veteran. He's the guy that finished the year as your starter. You basically want to show the team, the other guys on the roster, that the incumbent player got a fair shot at it and got beat out. Not that it was just handed to Bo Nix, right, the first round pick. You do that by starting Stidham in this preseason game, and you keep going forward in that regard. So all of that makes sense. It's a smart way of handling things. And you let the rest of it take the pace in which it takes. But Stidham is popular in the locker room. He's well liked. He's well respected. And you give him the chance. And on top of that, if for some reason Zach Wilson looks lights out and you decide maybe you want to move on from Jarrett Stidham, or maybe he's available for trade, remember, everybody who goes out in the preseason is not just putting stuff on video for their team. They're putting it on for the other 31. And that's valuable too. So I think that's the right move. But yeah, Bo Nix is going to start. He's almost certainly going to start week 1 unless something strange happens. And that's what it should be. Starting Stidham in Seattle does Stidham no favors, because the second anything goes wrong,
Right.
you know, if they were to lose, gotta go to Bo Nix, right? The fan base will go berserk about it.
Well,
If Stidham were to throw a pick, same thing. If every drive that ends up poorly, Stidham's going to get blamed for it. It doesn't help Stidham, and it doesn't necessarily help Nix, because Nix could be doing those reps, because Nix is in a spot in which he's expected to have bumps on the way, right?
Mhm.
That's to be expected. And the fan base will understand that and accept some of that as well. So that's part of the equation. And it's part of this year where you get a bit of, not as much as before, because the fans are rightfully impatient for a playoff caliber team after all these years. But they understand that Bo Nix is a rookie. He's going to make mistakes. You get a honeymoon period.
Right.
So you don't help Stidham by starting him in Seattle. And those are reps that could go to Nix and help you, Sean Payton and company, decide if he's ready to go. And for the fan base, get him off your back, because if they lose in Seattle and Bo Nix in his first game isn't good, fans are going to go, first game.
Right.
Right.
And here's the other part of the quarterback competition that I want to drive home. Sean Payton wears his ego on his sleeve. Sean Payton believes he is the smartest person in the room. And you know, he should feel that way. You're the head coach. You've won a Super Bowl. You're one of the more experienced, more winning head coaches in recent NFL memory. I almost make it like a poker comparison where, you know, he's sitting with pocket aces, or he's got ace king or ace queen up his sleeve, right? With Bo Nix. That's how he feels. I got this great hand. I just got to figure out when to play it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to over bet after we see the first three cards. I don't want to bet the flop, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Because believe me, you can lose with pocket aces. I've done it. Or ace king. I've done that.
I got busted from a tournament with ace king against pocket jacks.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Sean Payton's too egotistical not to play Bo Nix week one. Sean Payton.
Well, I'm not sure on that.
I don't know. I think Sean Payton wants to go out there and show that he got the guy. Look at what I can do when I have my guy. Look at what I can do when I don't have my guy with Russell Wilson last year. Look at how that went. I got my guy. Let me show you what I can do with this team. I think Sean Payton's ego will also lead him towards starting Bo Nix. Now, is Bo Nix the clear choice? In my opinion, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think Sean Payton wants to go out there and show, this is my guy. We're coming. Here's what we're going to do.
It'd be interesting to see how that shakes out, obviously, because this is going to be a discussion for the Broncos, for the internally and, of course, the fan base for a while. We'll talk more about this, because I think the point you're making is interesting, and it means that the measurements of success for Bo Nix might be a little bit different inside the building and across the NFL. But at the moment, let's take a moment here. A little cloudy today, which is nice, but it's, you know, we know it's going to get hotter over the course of the weekend. You know, there's a football game coming up, and let's talk some barbecue, because that's what I'm thinking when football comes around. And if you've been all around the country to try all sorts of different types, you can be familiar with all sorts of different sauces and styles and this and that. Well, you can get all of that and more, because along the Front Range, you've got one of the best barbecue spots in town. That's our friends at Rolling Smoke Barbecue. 10 years ago, Terry started with just a food truck. It was that good and that popular that then he spun it into 4 different locations, each serving up the best fresh barbecue you can find in Colorado every single day. Lots changed in 10 years, but the commitment remains the same, serving you and your family the best barbecue in town. They do have 4 locations. The first one, of course, in Aurora, inside the Stanley Marketplace. Like I say, they're just follow your nose when you walk in there. They're right in the middle, and you can't miss it. In Golden, inside the Golden Mill, at the corner of Dry Creek and University and Centennial. That's where I'm at, honestly, once a week. I'm not afraid to say it. I totally am. And now at the newest location at 38th Avenue up in Wheat Ridge. But if you just want to sample it, maybe you're up at one of the concerts at Red Rocks, obviously. Well, one, that's fun anyway. Why mess it up with like a hot dog or nachos? Go get some barbecue. Rolling Smoke is up there too, so you can try them there. Then come on down. You'll want to hit up one of those 4 locations. Bring it back to your family, your friends, maybe even cater a little bit for a football game happening this weekend. Though if you do that, you want to call pronto, because again, like I said, they make it fresh, and when they're out, they're not carrying it around. When it's sold out, it's gone. So stop by and see Terry and the crew today, or grab it to go or catering order. Easy to find. You can order online for pickup too. It's Rolling Smoke Barbecue online at rollingsmokebbq.com. AP, as we watch the Broncos practice here, and we watch obviously the 3 quarterbacks do their thing in rotation, it has been Bo Nix heavy, as we've talked about. You put it at 7 out of 10 days in which he's gotten the most reps with the ones, and that tells you more than essentially anything else. I mean, in reality, and it tells you that regardless of what an unofficial depth chart says, that obviously Bo Nix already basically is QB1 because he's getting the most time.
Look at this real quick. Look, you see Tim Patrick just staring him down after making that touchdown. But let me just reenact this real quick. Tim Patrick, incredible grab, looks at the cornerback like this. He's just like, You know what I just did? Tim Patrick getting back in that group, baby.
Yeah, it's nice to see him healthy. It really is.
That was the cool thing. Let me also say this real quick, too. Jaleel McLaughlin's quads look like the ham bone in the Flintstones. Like it is insane.
And you know what's funny is like Quinn Minor's belly.
Yes.
Jaleel's more than happy to show that off. He's got the shortest shorts.
Oh, I love it.
In camp.
He's got the Bob Weir shorts on. Look at this.
Yeah, he's got the little shorts
we got the
going
best
on.
view in the house right now. I know we can't show the camera, but Javonte Williams just made a fantastic over-the-shoulder grab for a touchdown.
Things are going really well, and for the Broncos in camp, they look well. Williams looks good. McLaughlin looks thicker, which is good. He's got to undertake that. So but when you look at the quarterbacks and you think down this draft, right, one of the narratives, especially from the national media, and that was something that you're right, Sean Payton at times does get a little bit wrapped up in. Bo Nix was the 6th quarterback taken. Behind, of course, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels for the Commanders, Drake May for the Patriots, Michael Penix, who we know isn't going to play because he backs up Kirk Cousins, of course, and J.J. McCarthy with the Vikings. My guess, and I said that on day one, I don't think Bo Nix, when you put all the quarterback stats together at the end of the year, is going to look like the 6th best quarterback in that draft. I think he's going to be higher than that. And I think he's got an opportunity to maybe be quite a bit higher than that. It would not shock me. We know he'll get more than playing time than Penix. I do not feel nearly as confident about J.J. McCarthy, which is one of the reasons I said for months, even prior to the draft, that was a smokescreen, of which Sean Payton basically admitted to after the draft. McCarthy, not, even with Justin Jefferson, not a guy that passed a lot at Michigan. It would not shock me, and especially given the state of the Patriots, that at the end of this year, if Bo Nix has the 3rd best stats of quarterbacks behind maybe Daniels, who can run, and Williams, it wouldn't shock me. And your point about Sean Payton, I think, would be fair in so much as to say that Sean Payton would probably love to be able at the end of the year going, oh, you guys thought I didn't know what I was doing, and you thought he was a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and he was the 6th quarterback pick, and we reached. I think Sean Payton is the guy that likes to be able to go, oh, we reached, huh? How come our guy was the 3rd best quarterback? Well, and I do think that drives him a little bit.
And here's the other thing, just kind of psychoanalyzing Sean Payton from afar. When he thinks something, he sticks with it. He came into this job last year knowing Russell Wilson wasn't going to be the guy. And look, I don't know what he's thinking all the time, but when I was sitting in those post-game press conferences at Empower Field, you could tell he's biting his tongue in his head. He's giving a little coach speak in the post-game press conferences. Tell me how you really feel, coach. And at the end of the day, the reason why I think it's a little bit of an ego thing is I just look back to how highly he talked about Bo Nix after they drafted him. Oh, the draft process was incredible. This guy absorbs, knowledge in the blink of an eye, whatever it might be. So I just think the natural skill set's there. There's the belief from Sean Payton, but I think there's like that ego, that itch that he has to scratch of like, I know exactly what I'm doing. I got the best guy regardless if he was the 6th best quarterback in the draft. But here's the other thing I'll say, Sean. I think you make a great point of the number of quarterbacks drafted in this last NFL draft and whatnot. It reminds me a lot of the 2018 NFL draft, where you had Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, probably a couple more that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen, 2 guys that were selected pretty high in that draft, have evolved into nothing.
I mean, at least Sam Darnold's still in the league.
I guess, Zach Wilson status.
Right. Right. A guy that is no longer being considered as a starter. And that's always a risk. And I think that's interesting here in Nix's case. And I've talked about the worst possible scenario, but the funny thing is the worst possible scenario for Bo Nix is actually one of the reasons he should start week 1. Because, and you actually brought him up, Josh Rosen. I already see enough from Nix, and I've felt the same way. I think Nix, the dirty secret in the NFL draft, and I think, you know this, AP, I think a lot of people do know this, but maybe not everybody does. Your ability matters a lot. Where you get selected makes even more in a lot of cases. Go back to, say, David Carr, who everyone agreed looked like a good NFL quarterback, but has set a new record for sacks as a rookie, had no line protecting him, gotten beaten up, was never quite the same player at that, never reached his maximum level of ability, in part because he was just drafted by the wrong team. That happens. You talk about quarterbacks and matching up with their coaches. I don't know what will have happened with Trey Lance. It kind of looks like maybe people just misread.
Oh, I want him to start.
I think people maybe misread. You're a Cowboys fan. Maybe misread Trey Lance.
Let's go.
The 49ers
in there.
But you think about how that works, right? If you can't play for Kyle Shanahan, maybe you can't play for anybody. Who knows? But the worst case scenario for Nix, and I think for Bo Nix, this was one of the best case scenarios to be drafted by the Broncos, just because Sean Payton is his quarterback, and Nix, while he's not going to ever be Drew Brees, he does share the idea of like 2 quick reads and chuck it, get it out. Don't hold on to it. Use the middle of the field. Spread it around to multiple targets. These are the kind of things that Sean Payton thinks, and it's also the way Bo Nix thinks about offense. So they're a fit there, and I think it will mean that the floor is relatively high. Where is the ceiling? I don't know. But you have to find out. And let's just say what we're seeing out here doesn't translate, because it happens. And like Josh Rosen, he goes out there, and Rosen had some personality things that Nix does not appear to have. That's the challenge. But the Cardinals found out in 1 year that Josh Rosen was not going to be their longtime quarterback. They could tell. So you had a tough decision to make, because you hate going with a high first-round pick. Rosen was picked, I think, 10th. You hate going with a high first-round pick, and then the very next year say, we have to pick another quarterback. But what do you want to do? You want to throw good money after bad? If you messed it up, you messed it up. And the smart move the Cardinals made at the time was said, you know what? Okay, we blew it. We can't fix it. We're going to dump him to the Dolphins, and we're going to pick Kyler Murray. Well, that was the right choice.
Yeah, it was.
And for the Broncos, even the worst case scenario for Bo Nix, which I don't think will happen, but the worst case scenarios, let's find out that Bo Nix just can't hack it at this level. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the Broncos end up winning 4 games, 5 games. Well, now you have a top 5 pick. Right. What are you going to do? Are you going to just try to knock your head against the brick wall again, hoping the brick wall comes down? Or are you going to say, you know what? Bo Nix on his rookie deal makes less money than what Jared Stidham makes. So if Bo Nix sticks around as a backup quarterback and maybe he figures it out, great. But we're not going to wait and find out. We're going to go pick Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers or maybe Shedeur Sanders or whatever. And we're going to go that way. And I think Sean Payton is the kind of guy that is ruthless enough, and I say that in a good way, who would do that.
Yes.
And so that's
absolutely.
all the more reason
Ego
to get Nix in here, because you've got to find out what you've got, good or bad. And even if it's bad, even if it's disastrous for the long term for the Broncos, it's not that bad, because you'll have a high pick and can go at it again. The worst thing you can do is delay Nix's time on the field, and then you have fewer opportunities to evaluate him. That's the worst thing that the Broncos can do.
No, I think that's a good point. And the other thing that I would add in regards to Bo Nix in general, one reason I think Bo Nix is going to be successful, and I was thinking about this watching his press conference yesterday, he is boring. He is a robot.
You know who else was boring? Tom Brady was boring. Drew Brees was boring. Peyton Manning had a little bit of humor, but otherwise boring.
He is not getting caught up in the stardom, and I'm the QB1 potentially, and I'm the face of the franchise potentially.
You know who he reminds me of personality-wise? Trevor Siemian. He kind of has that vibe. He's like, I'm here. I have a job to do. I'm just going to do what I'm told. I'm focusing on my job. He's got that. And one of the reasons that I remember saying that when the Broncos landed Siemian, and in that 2016 season, knew he wasn't going to be the long-term starter, but I was telling everyone who would listen, I'm like, Trevor Siemian's going to retire from the NFL before he's 40 with about $40 million in the bank.
Probably,
because backup quarterbacks make good money, and Trevor Siemian will have a job as long as he wants it, because every team and every coach in the league knows this guy knows what his job is. He doesn't complain. He goes and does his job. He's ready when you call on him, and that's fine. And that's that similarity with Nix when he was asked specifically about, and a little bit of humor there showed, he was asked about what happens if you would you accept it, was the way the question was worded. Would you accept it if you're the backup? And his response was, well, I don't really know if I'd have any choice. It was like, I'll do what I'm told to do. I intend to start. I'd like to start. But same kind of vibe I got from Simeon is like, I'm just here to do my job. And I'm going to ask the questions. I'm going to try to get as better as I can, as quickly as I can. And that's the right mindset. And I think it's a good point that you brought it that way. He's kind of boring. And that's good.
And I think for this Broncos team, boring is good.
At every level.
It is the opposite end of the spectrum, where last year you had Mr. Charismatic Russell Wilson. I just believe in these guys. I'm feeling so great about the energy and the momentum.
Who's the best?
It's just
the best player on this team might be the most boring player on this team.
Yeah.
And Pat Surtain.
Which is what you want.
Yeah.
But like I said, I just think it's a breath of fresh air. And that's why I'm just so excited to get to this preseason game, because I want to see them go up against some other competition. We're observing some of the kickoff rules right now, but we saw some scrimmaging going on. We saw some individual drills with the receivers and the quarterbacks and whatnot, but we're finally going to get to see, if it's all bark, no bite, or if this team's really got some bite in them once we get to the preseason.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how it all shakes out, obviously. And with the beginning will be this Sunday. Obviously, it is preseason. The starters obviously will not play a lot. But then again, the Broncos are in a spot where they need to have more than a few different starting roles that are up for grabs. So this roster will be interesting to see how it all comes together. We'll have a chance to talk more about this with Eric Goodman of Morning Drive. But first, you want to share a little bit. You are a Denver Athletic Club member. You have a little thing to say about it?
I am a Denver Athletic Club member. I was there yesterday. I'll probably be there again today. And let me tell you about them, because are you looking for the perfect place to work, play, exercise, and socialize? Then look no further than our friends over at the Denver Athletic Club, right in the heart of downtown Denver. As a DAC member, you'll enjoy top-notch amenities like a full fitness center, licensed child care center, spa, massage therapy, Pilates, and golf simulators, plus so much more, guys. But what truly sets the DAC apart is the vibrant community. This member-owned club is all about you, offering year-round social events, co-working, dining, and fun for the entire family. The Denver Athletic Club is truly a club for your whole life, and now for a limited time, new members will pay a $0 initiation fee. Join the DAC today. And it's funny, I've heard Doug Ottewell's ad read for the Denver Athletic Club running on our radio waves for quite some time, and he talks about, it's a club for your whole life, and I never really understood that. And I've been a member for the last few months, and it really is a club for your whole life. Like, I could go right from Broncos training camp, Sean. I got my gym bag in the car. I could go post up at the DAC. I could do my work in their little study. They got the coffee machine. They got the water. I mean, and it's a bunch of other hardworking individuals. So there's some great networking opportunities. So I can do that. I can work, and then I can go upstairs and work out, and then I can hit the sauna, the steam room, take a shower. And you know what? I can go upstairs, have a cocktail on the rooftop. They've got a pub inside. I can grab something to eat. They've got a bowling alley in the DAC. It is truly a club for your whole life. I cannot recommend it enough. If you've ever been interested in joining the DAC, be sure to check them out. No initiation fee at the moment. And I'm on social at Media by AP. Feel free to DM me with any questions. Cannot recommend it enough. Absolutely love the Denver Athletic Club, and I know you will too.
We are live at Broncos Park out at Dove Valley. We'll have an opportunity to sit down with Eric Goodman of Morning Drive. We'll do that next. Welcome back to Broncos Training Camp, live from Broncos Park out at Dove Valley. I'm Sean Drotar. With me now is the host of Morning Drive with his co-host Bruce Hurdle, Eric Goodman. Eric, thanks for joining us again. Joined us a little bit ago and had an opportunity to talk about training camp. As it goes on, now we're in game week, or at least as far as game week goes for preseason. And the way this is going to be looked at, I think, for Bo Nix, for Sean Payton in his second year, I think this probably has a little more value than most preseason games to a lot of fans based on what it might be predicted for the Denver Broncos. But that's probably the wrong way to go about it, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, today's a big day. I'll be honest, I'm very tired. I was up all night thinking, what did Sean Payton and the coaching staff talk about in their meeting last night about deciding who is going to start the opening preseason game?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going through all these computations and permutations in my head.
Like, there's only 3, right? It's available,
right?
So it's got to be one of those.
Right. So how is this going to all work out? At the end of the day, this season, as I'm sure you and Sandy have talked about, this season is about the growth of Bo Nix and how that all pans out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that Sean tipped his hand, but he did say Stidham is going to play with the first team at some point in the preseason. And I think it is going to be Sunday.
I agree.
And I think it makes the most sense for Stidham to play with the first team on Sunday for a number of reasons. One, you do it out of respect. You do it because, in theory, he is the incumbent here, right? He's popular in the locker room, and at least give this guy a chance to show something with the first team. The other reason is, and it's a little bit more, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, it's a little more dark with the way that I'm saying it. Bo Nix is going to get more playing time in the first preseason game. If you start him, he's going to get, 15 to 18 snaps?
Yeah, probably.
And then he's going to be out. With Nix, you can play him with the second team and the third team and get him more reps. depending on how Nix progresses in this preseason game and in practice, I think I'd be pretty surprised unless Stidham makes a huge leap in practice, looks really good in the preseason. I think by the next preseason game, it will be Nix.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think that starting Stidham in the first preseason game makes all the sense in the world for the reasons you discussed. The idea of the incumbent, the veteran, the guy that's been in the league the longest, even though he started a lot fewer games
and
than Zach Wilson.
And he's on top of the depth chart. Remember, the rookies are always at the back
right, although
of the depth chart.
That's an old Parcells thing, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything. But yeah, I think Stidham starts today, this weekend against Indy, and then I think Bo Nix starts week 2, and then unless Nix is absolutely disastrous, I don't think he even plays in the third preseason game. I think that's a big Zach Wilson show. If he does, it's minimal, and it's the Zach Wilson show, and then Bo Nix starts week 1, which is how I expect this to all shake out.
I'd be stunned if Bo Nix does not play in the third preseason game.
I don't think the Broncos are going to play a lot of starters. I mean, I guess we'll find it out. But I think we're on the same page.
Get him as many reps as you can. I don't mean play him a half.
Mm-hmm.
Get him out there. Put him in the mindset that he is going to play that day. Put him in a game day
with the ones
NFL
against Arizona.
Even if it's not the ones, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Get him out there for at least a series to make him go through the mental reps of starting a game.
I can get behind that. That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, this idea that Bo Nix is a matter of a quarterback competition, it's kind of funny as we've gotten out here in camp and the days have gone along. It's been evident, I think, to everybody finally that it's not a competition. It never was a competition. And the idea that, anyone was forwarding the idea that it was, either didn't know what they were paying attention to or just was looking for clickbait or reaction, because this has always been about one job. And you hit it right when you came in. This whole season is about whether Bo Nix can take the reins, correct? And to hold this job for the Denver Broncos. So the sooner he was going to get in there, the better. Obviously, I think they like Jarrett Stidham. I think all 3 quarterbacks are going to make this team. I understand they may not make all the 53 because the new rule allows your third quarterback to be elevated from the practice squad every week and not have to expose them to waivers. I think that's where Zach Wilson is headed. But it is really about even the preseason at this point now becomes about how do you chart this out so Bo Nix starts as soon as possible. And I think that's probably the way to do it, whether the third preseason game or not comes into effect.
You have been around this organization for a long time, specifically starting in 2016, where there was one common phrase that every media member said that I don't believe anyone has truly said, unless, to your point, they're completely naive to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
The phrase that pays has always been, who won the day?
Right.
Have you ever said that once at this training camp?
No.
Because it's not about who wins the day.
No.
Because
I've never said that at any training camp, because these are all little chapters in a larger book.
Well, hold on. When it was Simeon and Lynch, it was who won the day. When you had other quarterback competitions, it was who won the day. That's how it was charted. Who was better today? Who's the lead horse to get the starting job? This situation is different because we know who Jarrett Stidham is.
Right.
And we know what we hope Bo Nix eventually becomes.
And you have to find out.
So it's not about winning the day. Him winning the starting job is inevitable.
Yes.
When it was Lynch and Simeon, it was never inevitable. It was who was the better quarterback.
Mm-hmm. And the thought was, it might be inevitable because Paxton Lynch was a first-round draft pick. But it was so obvious when he came into camp here that he was so not ready for the job that Simeon, who was a professional that knew what he was supposed to do, ended up winning that job anyway, and Lynch finds himself out of the league in relatively short order. But Nix is not Lynch. Nix has come in consistently prepared, consistently ready. Sean Payton talked about that early, even in the combine process, in the pre-draft process. And if he wasn't ready after 61 career college starts, you'd know by now.
I have a story for you that you might enjoy. So what everybody said about Paxton Lynch and why he didn't play well because he was on his Xbox too long. You've heard that story.
Of course.
And everybody talk. And do you believe it?
No.
It's 100% true. Would you like me to know? This is the story. This is why I can say this with 100% certainty.
Okay.
I used to hear other people say this. And you're like, well, how do you know? You in his living room?
Well, maybe a couple words.
I am at a preseason game, and You know that I smoke cigarettes. There aren't any benefits to smoking cigarettes. Although I can tell you, I can give you one benefit to smoking cigarettes. I'm in the concourse at halftime, and I'm having a cigarette like one level below where all of the smokers hang out.
Right.
And I'm talking to some guy, and then he recognizes me for what I do. And we're talking about Paxton Lynch. I don't know if he even knows Paxton Lynch. He tells me he is Paxton Lynch's cousin, and he plays Xbox with Paxton all the time. And he said to me, he plays it way too much. Would you call that? Now, I don't have a second source on this, but I'm pretty confident on sports talk radio, where journalistic integrity is completely out the roof or out the window. I will say single source that Paxton Lynch's cousin, who played Xbox with him, told me that Paxton plays too much. Well, now do you believe the story?
I guess it's a matter of
I didn't ID the guy. I didn't ID him.
He's probably got a lot of cousins. Yeah. So
he might, yeah.
But I mean, I get it. You do have to spend your time here, studying your iPad, studying your playbook, studying all of that. And it's possible, I guess, it's too much. But yeah, the idea that Paxton Lynch got back from practice and just was having Mountain Dew all night and playing Call of Duty or whatever. That one was a bit hard to believe.
Don't go J.D. Vance with the Mountain Dew reference. I mean, this is not a political show.
But I can see that. I can see the scenario. You have to take it. You do have to take it seriously. And when you're a first-round draft pick and you're a quarterback, you're expected to know everything, all the calls, all the modifications, all of it.
And remember, on those iPads, they track it. They know when you're on.
Yep, they know when you're on it.
I was told by somebody in the 49ers organization, one of the knocks, believe it or not, against Colin Kaepernick was he was not on his iPad enough.
Mm-hmm.
And how do they know? They track it. They know when you're on. They know when you're not.
We knew this was happening up at Boulder last year. Deion Sanders talked about this with some of the players that weren't studying and actually mentioned the same thing. We know when they're looking at their playbooks that we give them. We know when we give them the tablets. We know when that is open and they're looking at it. We know that they're flipping pages and didn't just turn it on and set it on plug it in and set it on the counter.
And you know what else we know? So for that situation, you can make that case. It's not public record, but it's public record to the coaching staff.
Right.
Okay. You know what else is literally public record? That the house that Shiloh and Shador bought for Deion is not part of the public record because it was never bought for him.
Right. There were no sales.
I would love to see a deed, but the nice video production of them buying him a house made it seem like they did it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't.
That ended up being the case because you're right.
They didn't do it.
That was still available for sale after the video. Yeah,
it was a show.
Yep, it was a show. It's funny how much of this is actually entertainment. Of course, that's sports in a nutshell, as well. As we look at Broncos camp here on a blissfully cloudy, cool day. Finally,
isn't it nice?
Yeah,
look at you. Look at you at the half set.
Amazing. Yeah. It's a pretty light one, but I was like, hey, I can actually wear some sleeves for a day. I'm like, how about that?
Well, you're tired of showing off your guns to everybody.
Yeah, that must be it.
Guys get intimidated around you.
Yeah, that must be it. But the Broncos now in this practice, one thing I wanted to bring up with you, because it's kind of funny. A lot of the narrative around this is there's not a lot of juice. There's not a lot of noise. There's not a lot of excitement. I look at the reports out of the Chiefs training camp or out of the Niners training camp, minus, Ayuk, obviously, and think that the idea is, you're supposed to have exciting training camp. Look, good teams have boring practices. Boring practices are a sign of generally a pretty good team. Well, when you're expecting some drama to occur every day, that's what happens when you have a bad team.
Well, but when you look at skill position players, and Vele makes a catch every.
But I think that's
exciting. When you see interceptions, that's exciting. What I find humorous is the fans who are on that hill when it's a running play. Okay, and a guy, let's say, gets to the second level and then has this burst towards the end zone. The fans actually believe that was going to be a touchdown.
Yeah,
that's exciting.
They stop pursuing after that. Once you get that,
don't tell the fans that. Don't take away their excitement.
And I'm not gonna. I'm all for it. Whatever your fun is, you enjoy your fun. Even Paxton Lynch and his Xbox, you do you, man. I'm not here to tell you how to have fun with your time. But yeah, I look at this and I think that under Sean Payton in the second year, I think these training camp practices look very different. I think they seem very different. It's more professional. They're more uniform. They're more consistent. And I think all of that is a good sign. I don't know. In fact, I do not expect it to reflect in the win-loss record, but that doesn't mean that the team is not trending in the right direction. What I see here in training camp is a team that is going in the right direction, even further along than we saw last year, obviously. And that's a good sign because the Broncos aren't challenging for the Super Bowl this year. They're not challenging for the Super Bowl next year, but they finally are picking a direction and going in that direction. And that's something for the majority.
What's that direction to you?
Well, that direction seems to be that Sean Payton offense as best as he can assemble it. And we'll find out. He's only started a rookie quarterback exactly one time in his career. And I mean one time, not 1 year, one game. Ian Book back in 2021. It's the only time a rookie quarterback's ever started for Sean Payton. So this is new to everybody. But the fact that Sean Payton even said that is a good sign. I think this team is trying to develop a particular team culture of focus, of making sure there's attention to detail, without necessarily turning it into the Tom Coughlin no fun zone all the time. And I think that's a pretty healthy way.
Can I simplify this for you?
Yeah.
He's building an identity through his offensive line where he wants them to be tough.
They're the ones that get paid.
They have the highest paid offensive line room in the league.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Well, they spent the most in free agency last year, and now their Miners doesn't even bump up till 2026. But yeah,
and Bowles is still on the books.
Highest paid player on the roster this year.
With that, he wants this team to be tough on both sides of the ball, on the line. That's the identity that he was building, or is building, I should say. We could talk about Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, but people do forget, and I don't want to sound like, I'm pumping Sean Payton's tires, but Sean Payton always had a very good offensive line.
Yeah.
And
a quarterback with a quick release.
Well, he had a quarterback. Okay, if we're going to be fair about this, Drew Brees was a Pro Bowler before he went to New Orleans.
Correct.
Period. He helped make Drew Brees a better quarterback. But don't think for a minute Drew Brees was some cast off from San Diego because he wasn't. Yes, they took Phillip Rivers. Yes, Drew Brees was coming off an injury, but he put up some pretty impressive numbers in a Marty Schottenheimer offense and made a Pro Bowl. But yes, Peyton made him better, and there was a really good offensive line eventually in front of him and good skill position players. Good for Sean Payton. We'll see if this same formula works for him in Denver with Bo Nix and Powers and McGlinchey. By the way, both those guys need to be better in pass pro. We know they are road graders. Fortunately, we know with Quinn Miners, he does both very well.
The game is still played on the line, in the trenches. Nothing has changed in football there. A lot of it around at window dressing. It makes a lot of sense to start that way. We'll talk more about it, of course, as we go along. But thanks to Eric Goodman, you can catch him every morning on Mile High Sports at the Coast. Bruce Hurdle, starting off your day with the best news. Appreciate you stopping in and giving us a little bit of extra work on a day in which you've already finished your show. Always appreciate it.
By the way, the nice plug that you just gave me, I want to apologize for my spelling, my punctuation. You read it directly off the email I sent you. I'm sorry that my spelling isn't better. I should have spell checked it.
It's what happens. Old-time editor, man. I get picky about those sort of things. Appreciate it, Eric. We'll be back for more for Broncos Park at Dove Valley in just a moment. Thanks so much to Eric Goodman for joining us. Of course, you can catch him every morning with Bruce Hurdle, who's been on the program as well. You can catch them on Morning Drive at Mile High Sports every single weekday. Get you set for some of the happenings that'll be out here at Broncos camp. We'll turn our attention briefly to the Olympics. The United States and Serbia facing off in basketball. France knocked off Germany earlier, just really a couple minutes ago. They'll be moving on to the gold medal game against the winner of the U.S. and Serbia. Serbia in that game simply because Nikola Jokic dragged a lackluster Serbian team against Australia across the finish line. Steve Kerr was asked about the game and said, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, said that we feel that we have the best 1 to 12 roster at the Olympics, but we know that our guys know who number 1 is, and indicated that there's Nikola Jokic. They get it. He's the best basketball player on the planet. It's probably not enough to overcome Team USA, to be completely honest, which is absolutely loaded and playing extremely well. But you never know. As, Herman Edwards once said, that's why you play the games.
Nikola Jokic is Thanos. He is Thanos. And look, the U.S. team, what's the line? Does anyone know what the line is? It's got to be double digit. 15.5 from super producer Danny Bailey. Here's the thing, man. Regardless of what happens in this game today, it's not going to change my opinion of Nikola Jokic unless he somehow manages to win this.
Yeah, unless they win.
Because Ryan Blackburn,
another level.
If you want to check it out on our social media at Mile High Sports on Instagram, he did a video for us last night. He made the statement that if Nikola Jokic is able to lead Serbia to a victory in this game, that this would be his single greatest accomplishment in his basketball career.
I wouldn't argue that. I wouldn't. I mean, I really wouldn't. I get the you naturally say the NBA championship, and of course that is a longer-term goal. But I mean, this particular game in this situation against this
it's him, Boban, and a bunch of scrubs.
Yeah, but Bogdanovic is on there obviously, and he's actually the team captain and a good shooter. But they'll have to play a lot better than they did against Australia. You go down 20 points to the team, USA, and it is
it's absolutely Jover.
But regardless, what you've seen out of Jokic again. These phenomenal performances, he's just so much. It is a combination of the numbers are overwhelming and so consistent. Every game, he is just day in and day out. He's the same guy. He's by far the best player on the floor. Every single time he steps out on the floor, it is really, I think, for Nuggets fans and for basketball fans in general, enjoy it. You are talking about a world in which I get it. The Nuggets didn't repeat. The Avalanche didn't win. But you have the unquestioned best basketball player on the planet playing in your town. You have at least, if not unquestioned, the man who's got the Hart Trophy at the moment.
Oh, hold on. Who is this? Who is that? 81?
It's the man who's been making plays all camp, Devon Vele.
That was like OBJ-esque. I'm sorry to get you off your tangent here, but Devon Vele just made an absolutely insane diving one-handed catch right in front of us.
Well, I was telling people earlier this week, he won't be on the practice squad because you won't be able to keep him on the practice squad. They're going to have to find a spot on the roster for Devon Vele to go ahead and make this team. And I think that's probably going to be the case. Obviously, you're talking about a guy that older, coming out of the he's already 20. He's already 26 years old, and so I think he's going to be hard to hide. I think the Broncos are going to have to find a spot. He has been out of the receiving group. He has been the one guy that has jumped off the page. I would say, quite frankly, along with Tim Patrick, who has jumped off the page virtually every day, and then that's nice to see him continue to get good work in. So the Broncos working as we are out here, getting things a little bit interesting in the red zone drills, as you can imagine. But you go back to Jokic a little bit, and I mean, for fans that are looking at this Broncos team trying to come back around and be a playoff contender again, you have the best basketball player on earth playing in your town. You also have maybe the best hockey player on earth playing in your town, in Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah, surefire top three, if not the best.
Yeah, at least arguably, right? And Jokic is even inarguably. When the coach of Team USA says that Jokic is the best player on the planet, we're done. That's over. The discussion's over.
That could be a little mind gamey, though, from Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr likes to throw those subliminal type of messages. I mean, not that you have to motivate Team USA. You got LeBron, you got KD, you got Steph.
Jokic wasn't listening to it. He doesn't.
Hey, is Embiid playing today?
Presumably.
I saw he's got an ankle injury.
Oh, wow.
That dude is, let me just say that, bro. That dude is a certified clown. I cannot stand Joel Embiid.
Let me give Joel Embiid one.
No.
I'm going to give him
I'm not going to let you.
One backup. I'm going to do it. Because obviously he could have played for Cameroon. He could have played for France, right? But keep this in mind. He told ESPN back in June, why he played for the U.S. team. And there is an argument. He said, after talking to my family, I knew it had to be Team USA. I want to play with my brothers in the league. I want to play for my fans because they've been incredible since the day I came here. But most of all, I want to honor my son who was born in the U.S. I want my boy to know I played my first Olympics for him. You got to give him a little leeway
that's
there.
More of an. My beef with Joel Embiid is not Joel Embiid the person. It's Joel Embiid the basketball player. I'm sure I missed the early days of Troel Embiid when he was on Twitter, just trolling people left and right. He was a really likable guy at first, but now it's just like he's turned into a little bit of a diva on the basketball court. But from that perspective, Sean, yes, I think that's a cool thing to do, especially for your son who's born here in the U.S. and whatnot. And he's a great player.
He's a great player.
He's an MVP.
Phenomenal player.
He's an absolutely phenomenal player, but I digress. At the end of the day, though,
it's been a little funny watching him in the Olympics try to do a little Nikola Jokic, though. Some of the bloopers from Embiid trying to throw behind the back passes, blind passes, or
imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
It is, and you can tell that Embiid definitely has Jokic on his mind and is trying to make sure that he gets as much of that as he can. You can hear the Broncos getting excited here, and they're wrapping up practice with some of the red zone action that you'll expect hopefully get to see on Sunday against the Indianapolis Colts. But before the U.S.-Serbia game will be happening this afternoon. Earlier in the playoffs, Canada knocked off in this thing. And Jamal Murray's situation, this may be more fraught than people think with the Nuggets, because the contract situation, it's not been acrimonious, but it has been back and forth. The Nuggets clearly, Brian Blackburn of Milo Sports done a great job reporting it. They would like some protections against injury.
Pick play.
The opportunity in which Murray wants his max and he wants it straight up. And a subpar performance in the disastrous. Expected to be starting alongside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and being kind of a point generator with regularity for the Canadian team. He ended up basically coming off the bench at times. Murray sort of fell off a cliff. The idea that playoff Jamal is something that he could just do when he wants, I think, was burst in this playoffs. Granted, fatigue was part of that equation. But when you look at this situation for Murray now, how much of I don't think it's a concern yet. It's still August, but Jamal Murray definitely wants a new contract. He's bet on himself once before. He did that last year instead of taking the Nuggets deal. Now he may end up having to take a little bit even less than that. Is he going to bet on himself one more time and risk injury?
I think that would be dumb.
I do too. At a certain point, you have to.
That would be stupid.
The NBA is not the NFL. The second you sign that, you get every dollar of it. Well, every dollar, no matter what happens.
Here's the other part. And I hope one day I could make as much money as they do. Obviously, that's going to be a pipe dream and whatnot. But and I'm not trying to tell anyone how to handle their finances, but there's got to be a certain point where you've made because what's the difference? We're talking a few $1 million a year off the max.
Yeah.
But at some point, if you're already making 30, 40 million a year, yes, you don't want to leave any money on the table, but you have more than enough.
But think about the risk you'd undertake.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Let's
not worth it.
If Jamal Murray happens to hurt his knee again, that $40 million a year goes down to 12 or less. You know what I mean? The risk is just too high for Jamal Murray. And I understand he'd like to have a little more leverage, but your leverage is man, you've had a couple injuries right now, at least at the tail end of the NBA season and in the Olympics, your shot, not going to say it's broken, but it's not right. And we've seen guys go through that, and you risk all that, and you risk the fact that you may be regressing a little bit in your career, and you risk injury when you could, quite frankly, just sign the paper. And yeah, you're right. Maybe instead of $40 million, you get $38 million. You have to take that money because you can't guarantee. This is the same equation that college players used to have before going pro, right?
Yeah.
I mean, NIL changed all that. Before that, you're I get it. You'd love to come back and play, but if you get hurt and you're a top 10 pick in whatever league you're going to be picked in, you have to take that money because something out of your control could take it all away. And so for Murray, this is a fascinating decision for him because it's not going to be what he wants. Can he settle for that? Can he be comfortable settling for that? Will his personality allow him to be? In the end, I feel it is going to get done. But what is going to linger and what side, the Nuggets, Murray, or both, are going to be a little unhappy with it?
The other way that I look at it too, Sean, is the sooner you sign the contract, the sooner your contract kicks in, which means the younger you'll be when your contract is up. So, let's say Jamal Murray signed. What if he would have signed it last year, right? He wasn't an all-star, right? But let's say Jamal Murray comes back and makes an all-star team this year.
27?
26, 27, right around there.
So you get another crack at free agency at 30.
Exactly.
Which you can still make some pretty good coin.
Look at Paul George.
Right. Paul
George just got a massive deal. Maybe the length isn't there. You're looking at a 3-year deal, but the money will be there. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just feel like with Jamal Murray and the Nuggets, when it comes to the contract situation, I think it's run its course. But we also got to say this, too. And look, I don't want to completely hold this against him, and I don't think the Olympics is the best way to judge him of this. Jamal Murray is as good and as popular as he is right now in large part because of Nikola Jokic. I mean, look at how broken Jamal Murray looked in the Olympics without that pick and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, Nikola Jokic has set what is Jamal Murray in the NBA without Nikola Jokic?
We saw against Minnesota, we saw Minnesota swarm him and then have him have to basically either had turnover problems. I think the book is out on Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray, and that's the other part of the equation. How much better will Jamal Murray get? And I'm not ripping Jamal Murray either. I like Jamal Murray a lot. But he is what he is, and he's better with Jokic than with anybody else. He is probably a guy that may never, quite frankly, make the All-Star game, but he's going to be one of those guys that's in the discussion every year, borderline All-Star every year. But how much better are you really going to get? And so that's part of the equation too, and I get it. For Murray, who's definitely a fiery guy who considers himself an alpha dog, and that's all well and good. But you're correct in pointing out, and I don't think anyone would dispute it. In fact, Jamal Murray hasn't even disputed it. He's playing with the best player on the planet, and that makes life easier for everybody. And Murray at some point will have to look at it and say, you know what, you're a great number two for Jokic. You fit what he does, personalities work, everything works. But you could probably grab another dozen guards in the league right now. Now, granted, you can't afford all of them or trade all of them, but there are another dozen guards in the league right now who you could plug in instead of Jamal Murray,
right,
and feel as good or maybe even better about the Nuggets' chances. That's the reality.
And I agree with you.
Now, they don't have that guy, and that's why the Nuggets are more than happy to back up a dump truck of money to give Jamal Murray.
I agree. And you know, the other thing, and I understand, going into this last season, like, right, let me bet on myself. We just want to chip. Let me make an all-star team, right? I can understand that as well. But any hurdles that are still to overcome with Jamal Murray, I've got to be honest with you, I think direct back to what's the word I've used today, ego, but also self-fulfillment, because you're going to get the money. You're going to play on a championship team. What is not taken care of
you're
on
not getting
paper?
An all-star berth that you like, but that can't.
You want to prove to yourself that you can do it without this or without that, that it's
right.
not just because of Jokic, it's not just because of the draft, it's because I'm me and I can do it too. There's no logical reason to not sign the contract outside of ego.
And that's one of the interesting parts of it, because you think of someone like an Aaron Gordon, for example, who was supposed to be the guy, right? Drafted 5th overall out of Arizona, expect to be the guy. It didn't quite work that way. And then when he gets to Denver and syncs up with the team here, and Jokic in particular, Aaron Gordon realizes, hey, there's some freedom in me not having to carry that load. Right. And you know what? If number 15 is going to carry that, well, I'm going to work with number 15 and go, what do you need me to do that you can't do? I'm going to let you do the things that are better than what I can do, but what can I do? And it turns out, obviously, we've seen the connection between Gordon and Jokic. Murray already has that, but you're right. There seems to be some sort of a barrier, and the barrier seems to be, quite frankly, constructed by Jamal Murray, not by the Nuggets, not by Jokic, not by anybody else on the organization. It's that Murray, for some reason, maybe is just feeling that he's not getting his just desserts or attention or whatever. And quite frankly, I'm going to be honest, I don't think that's the case. I think when you talked about coming into the playoffs last year, that the national media around Murray, the playoff Jamal idea made it across the whole country. National broadcaster, well, playoff. You may not know Jamal Murray, but wait till you see him in the playoffs. That was the assumption. And then when it didn't happen this year, for various reasons, some outside of Murray's control, this team was run into the ground over the course of the year. Michael Malone has more or less copped to that. And if he hadn't, KCP on his way out made sure that everyone understood it. But that's one of the challenges, I think, for Jamal Murray. And coming back from the Olympics, we'll have to see how quickly this gets done. The longer it goes on, until the beginning of the season, the worse it may mean for the Nuggets and what they intend to do.
I'll close on this. The only way Jamal Murray gets better is if he has a look in the mirror and a real conversation with himself, because the only thing that's holding Jamal Murray back from being better is himself.
I think that's fair at this point. And Neil had an opportunity to talk with Cody Rourke, taking a quick early look, a couple days early, obviously, at the Broncos' first preseason game. We'll get to that in a moment, but I want to remind you that everybody wants to be healthy. Everybody wants to feel good about themselves, but not everybody has the same needs. Maybe you would like to get better sleep. Maybe you would like to have better energy over the course of the day. Maybe you would like to lose weight. Everybody has their own situations and their own particular health story. And on their journey, you have friends at Constitute Health. Their goal is for you to optimize your own health in the way you want to, what fits best for you. They work with patients on their own journey. They're complementing the existing healthcare. You start with blood work, and then you go with the trained medical professionals that meet with you one-on-one. They're transparent about your health, whatever your concerns might be, your goals, and you will work together with them to develop a plan that makes things best for you and you alone. It's not cookie cutter. It's based on your own blood work, your own sit down with their professionals to decide the best course of actions for the things that you want to do to handle your health in the manner that you want to handle it. So Bloodwork's quick and easy. There's over 2,000 locations they work with. There's probably one 15 minutes away from you wherever you are. You're building the foundation with Constitute Health for optimized health and longevity. Cutting-edge medical therapies help your body perform as it should or as it used to. They have hormone replacements, semaglutide, and GLP-1 therapies. You have a lot of different ways to look at these sort of things. You can look at the peptides, the NIDs, more, all sorts of different chances for you to take a look at the way that you can improve multiple parts of your life. The therapies help patients burn fat. They assist weight loss. They optimize sleep. They can help with your sleep cycles. They can make sure you get that focus, the cognitive faculties later in the day when you might be getting tired. You can retain muscle mass and build it as well as you're trying to go through that as well. So check them out at constitutehealth.com. Mention Mile Sports. Get $50 off your initial blood work and consultation. Or if you're at milesports.com anyway, reading Cody Rourke, for example, which you should be, you can check out the Constitute link on MHS, get $50 off that initial visit. You can find out everything about what your body's been trying to tell you via blood work and then put it all together with your friends at Constitute. Check them out at constitutehealth.com. Anita had a chance to break the game down with Cody Rourke. We're going to give you a chance to hear that next.
Another day at Broncos training camp here at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit. I am Anilo Piro. You can follow me on social at Media by AP. He's Cody Rourke at Cody Rourke NFL. And we've got ourselves some actual football to be played on this Sunday, my friend.
About time. I'm ready for it.
I'm beyond ready, dude. I mean,
did you know that you pronounced it the right way? You said Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit, not Broncos Park in Dove Valley.
people are still saying that?
Oh, yeah. You know, Drotar is like, I'm like, Drotar, you got it right there. You got it right there. You got it right there. Like, there's 6 different spots. Say Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit.
Sometimes
You have to hit. You have to do it right. The NFL doesn't like it when you don't.
What's the old saying? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. You know, maybe it's a little bit of that. A lot of seasoned vets, but
how about this weather?
I love it. I'm not gonna lie. It has me a little. I don't want to say tired, but like, you know, when like the sun's not shining, like when it's all overcast, it's like I feel relaxed. I actually do. I woke up. I got the coffee. I'm probably gonna go home. Maybe make some tea later. Maybe a little fuff for dinner.
Cup of tea, mate.
I don't know, man. I don't know, bro. But
bro.
Let's talk about this Denver Broncos preseason game. The first time, because here's the thing, Cody. I think you can only learn so much from the training camp period, right? Yeah. Going up against the other guys day after day after day. I look at training camp more so, it's funny because the first 2 days of training camp were called the acclimation period, but I really view the body of work at training camp as really just an acclimation and a ramp up to what will eventually be the regular season. But I'm excited for this first preseason game. Take a look at the formations, take a look at the comfort level, take a look at the understanding of how this team wants to operate moving forward. What are your overarching thoughts for the Denver Broncos as they enter into this preseason game?
You know, I would say you're not going to see a lot of the stuff we're going to see in the regular season. I think a lot of what Denver's doing, they've been going through the install process the last couple of weeks. Like they're going back to things that they installed in the spring, you know, second down, third down. But then they start adding, you know, more plays to those install packages, and it's just reiteration of that. But it's like these things here are like the foundational pieces of what they plan to do offensively, defensively. You're not going to see an ultra aggressive like defense in the sense like, oh, you're going to see all the blitz packages that Vance Joseph's going to throw out this season. You're not going to see all the different passing concepts that Sean Payton's going to do, but you're going to see the base stuff. And I think for us, I mean, we'll probably find out here today or maybe tomorrow. Sean said he'd keep us posted about, you know, who's going to start the game on Sunday. Obviously, it's an 11 a.m. Mountain Time game here locally. Be sure to check that out. I'm excited about that. You have game recap there in terms of, you know, what we saw from the game, what we learned from it. I mean, all eyes are going to be on the quarterback competition, but Anilo, I think there's so many different position battles that are going on right here that stand out to me. You know, wide receivers, a deep room right now. A number of guys there. You look at cornerback. You look at safety's got a question mark there. I like the outside linebackers. Look. You know, Nick Benito's been banged up a little bit, but you got Jonathan Cooper, Baron Browning will start, and they'll likely play 10 to 15 snaps. As Sean said, for the starters, that's really where they plan to play them, not just like series. Is, hey, 10 to 15, you know, 15 to 18 snaps is the sweet spot for them. And then it's like you got Jonah Ellis. Then you got undrafted rookie free agent Jalen Allen, who's had a nice training camp here at practice. You've had Thomas Nkumu stood out, made the roster last year. You know, you just have a lot of guys that are just vying for roster spot. The linebacker competition, like, the corner competition between Riley Moss, Damari Mathis, like these are going to be solved in the preseason, not at practice. And I think that's where we're going to get clarity for the regular season. So, hey, I like it. It's exciting. Denver's only road preseason game and then two straight home preseason games, which is weird. They're all on Sundays. And then so it's like, so I like it because usually you're used to a preseason game sometimes on a Friday night or a Saturday. I like the fact that these are all on Sunday. This one in particular, 11 a.m. But then next week against Green Bay, it's 6 o'clock here at home. And then the Sunday after that, it's a 2:30 in the afternoon preseason game on a Sunday, which it does feel weird, but it's like that's what the NFL schedule is going to feel like. So
yeah, that's fair.
I can't complain.
No, I'm just excited to have football back. I was talking with a buddy yesterday, and I do the Locked On Rockies postcast, and I guess we could go ahead and spill the beans. Locked On Broncos postcast will be hosted by yours truly. Really excited to be, working in with my guy Cody Rourke, who does the standard Locked On Broncos podcast. I'll be doing the postcast, so you'll get your standard
Locked
show with Cody.
Denver Sports Channel on YouTube.
Let's go.
Fast TV, Roku, wherever you get your.
Well,
podcast.
And that's what I was going to say, though, is I'm excited about the 11 o'clock start because it kind of just gets you back into that football mindset. And when I was talking about with a buddy, is after the trade deadline in Major League Baseball and after the All-Star game, right? Like now we are truly in the dog days of summer of the sports calendar. We're in the middle of training camp. So, the early training camp buzz is kind of worn off. Nobody cares about the preseason. It's kind of grasping for something. Baseball, there's not much going on. We're in the middle of that slog before we get to the postseason. I guess we've got the Olympics as well, but like this is the dog days of summer. So I'm excited to get some football back.
You mean to tell me I can now switch my FanDuel ad read to football talk now?
Yeah. Let me ask you this, though. You used the word foundational earlier. How much different do you think the foundation of what the Broncos are going to be working with this season? No Russell Wilson, no Justin Simmons on defense, arguably your two biggest leaders. How different of a look do you think we'll see the Broncos in this preseason game, maybe say compared to last year?
Well, I think foundationally on the offense, you mentioned Russell Wilson. Like it was Sean last year kind of going half and half, like half of what Sean wants to do versus like half, like the stuff that Russ is good at. Like it's trying to blend those two together and didn't necessarily mesh as well. Here, you were seeing exactly what Sean Payton wants from how his offense is operated, how the quarterbacks run the system. I think it is going to be different there defensively. You mentioned it. Hard to replace a guy like Justin Simmons. Pat Surtain has now become the face of that defensive side of the ball. You have Alex Singleton at linebacker, but I just think that Denver's defensive line is going to be beefier. I think they're going to be more physical, and I think that that's going to be something that's going to have a big impact this year, even though it's like, hey, who is the starting corner opposite of Pat? Can Brandon Jones, who they signed in free agency, can he stay healthy? He's dealing with the hamstring. He's on the side field. He's been jogging. He's been ramping things up, and from what I know is the hope is that he can maybe be back next week for joint practices against the Packers before the game. If not, they're going to just try to get him to the regular season. But in the meantime, they're getting a lot of looks at JL Skinner, Devin Key, and I think those are some good looks for them to be had there. But the defense is going to be different, for sure. But I also think you're going to see a more confident defense than what we saw last year. There's a lot of good pieces. Jaquan McMillan is going to become, I think, one of those faces of the defense alongside Pat. Man, he has had a terrific camp. I can't oversell it enough. Like, he has been that good, been sticky in coverage. I'm just so excited to see, like, this is a young team, AP. This is a very, very young team. And Sean Payton likes that. Like, it's, maybe a little bit different than what Sean's been accustomed to over the course of his career. He's always had a lot of veterans on a lot of his teams. You got really good veterans here. Don't get me wrong. But now you have young guys who you can mold and develop into what you want for your team. And I think that's an exciting thing to follow.
No, and I like it too, because I feel like, Sean Payton spent so long in New Orleans kind of doing things one way. I feel like when you come to an organization, like the Broncos that have really lacked an identity for close to a decade now, it's kind of hard to believe. I mean, it's 2024. The Broncos won the Super Bowl 50 was that 15-16 season. And, I like the idea of kind of tearing it down to build it back up, right? Because we know that what's been happening with the Broncos the last few seasons has been nothing short of it's always fallen short of expectations of what this fan base has for them. And so for Sean Payton to kind of wipe the slate clean, all right, now Russell Wilson's out of here. I think we all miss Justin Simmons, but I think at the end of the day, Sean Payton wants to build things with a blank slate, and I can't hate on him for that. So I think you see a lot of those young players, which I think makes for a lot of excitement, because you get to see this thing develop. You get to see how he nurtures this roster and hopefully how it blossoms over the next 2 to 3 seasons.
Well, and like, if the fan base has been paying attention, look, and I echo this sentiment. I understand the fan base is impatient. They want to win now. Trust me, Sean wants to win now, but they're at a point where they have so many young guys on this roster that Sean has come out and said, Greg Penner and George Payton, they've all come out in a unified stance and have said that we like the young players that we have.
Right.
Our goal to build this team is not going to be to go out and spend a lot of money in free agency every year. It's to draft players and develop them. He said, every once in a while we may have to spend, in free agency at a position, but ideally our goal and our belief is to build this team through the draft. And you know what that requires? Time. It requires patience. It requires, hey, like a player may not be ready to be who we think they can be in year 1 or year 2, but by year 3, that's the aiming point for it. So there's just so many moving pieces, and I get it. Like, fans want to see their team win. They want to see them win now. Trust me, I understand that. But the reality is that Denver is really trying to build it the right way, because you can say since Super Bowl 50, what have they done? They have done the opposite. They have gone through it. Look, they've had drafts, but they have really built this team by going out and spending in free agency, thinking that, hey, we're just a quarterback away. That has been the issue. But now they're drafting, they're developing players. To me, I think that's where it matters the most.
Well, and here's the thing, post Super Bowl 50, I can understand running it back the year after, with the defense, right? You just won a Super Bowl and whatnot, but I'm thinking like the Paxton Lynch era, the Drew Lock era, Teddy Bridgewater, where there was just a lot of moving parts. The Broncos were slapping a Band-Aid on an open wound.
Yeah.
They needed to reset, rebuild, whatever reword that you want to use. They needed to recognize that, hey, we won this Super Bowl at Super Bowl 50, and now we've got to move forward and kind of reinvent the wheel here a little bit. And instead of doing that, they, kind of just went year after year after year of mediocre outcome after mediocre outcome, and now they finally have gotten to the place where, after Russell Wilson, of all people, couldn't work out, the Denver Broncos were ready to, kind of wipe the slate clean thanks to Sean Payton. But I do want to ask you this before we get out of here, Cody. I know you and Sean have talked about it. It would not surprise me if Jarrett Stidham's going to be the starting quarterback, but Bo Nix is going to see some time. And I listen to Bo Nix.
You mean the preseason?
In the preseason game, yeah. Jarrett Stidham, I don't think will be your starting quarterback week 1, but Bo Nix is going to get some good action throughout this first preseason game, which I think is going to be obviously exciting for the fans and whatnot. I was watching his pregame or his media availability yesterday, talking about his expectations, what he wants to accomplish, how he goes about his business. But without biting off more than we can chew, what are a couple of things that is successful to you from Bo Nix in this first preseason game? What do you want to see Bo do?
I would just say, like, being smart with the football, protecting it, not putting it in harm's way. But you want to take chances, right? You want to find the balance and the gamble between, like, hey, Bo has enough belief in his own talent that he's like, you know what, I can get the football to that point. But you're going to have to make the mistakes here in preseason. Now, hopefully you don't make a lot of mistakes, ideally. But, mistakes are good for you. I remember Patrick Mahomes' rookie season in the preseason. What did he do? He threw nothing but picks, and everybody in Kansas City was freaking out because, like, this is the guy we drafted. Like, you got to make mistakes, and you got to, like Sean said too, Sean's not so worried about these guys, like, taking risks. He says, he said, you're going to make mistakes, but we want to correct the mistakes and then carry it over into the next week, so on and so forth. So I do think that is maybe something we'll keep an eye on here as we go about. But for Bo, just play clean, play loose. Like, he's out here, and I tell you what, he plays with confidence,
right?
And you can see it. Thought he had a really good day yesterday. The Broncos offense in general, there was a third down period. They didn't have a lot of success against pressure. But in these other periods, he moved the ball well, had great angles on his throws, led receivers in the right spot. So he's got that confidence, swagger to him, and I'm excited to see, hey, go out there and let it fly a little bit, and then, everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. One more for you. We're chatting with Cody Work. Be sure to follow him on Twitter and social media at Cody Work NFL. You wrote a story for MileHighSports.com before training camp, kind of talking about the three big things that you wanted to see, one of which was the quarterback competition, the longevity of it. We've seen Zach Wilson get eliminated from that. The running back room, I know, is another one. How's Javonte Williams going to bounce back? And I believe your third point was something along the lines of the defensive continuity and not replacing Justin Simmons, but moving forward with the defense as a unit. How have you seen those three things progress throughout training camp? And give me a couple of things that you want to see beyond the quarterbacks the Broncos do well during this preseason.
I would say those three things have kind of like played out in front of our eyes here at camp. Javonte looks great. The quarterback, I think Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix have really done a good job of pushing each other, and both guys are performing well. So that's nice to see there. That's progressing. And then the third one, obviously, in terms of the defense, you are seeing new faces get opportunities to step up. And, there's still some questions there, but it's like, all right, hey, we're starting to see the vision kind of play out a little bit. I'd say going forward here throughout the preseason, if I had to pinpoint anything, it would be can they stay healthy, right? Which is good because they've done a really good job so far staying healthy. You want to maintain and keep building on that. There's that, but also just like, what do some of these young guys look like? I'm so excited. Like some of these rookies, like Devon Vele's had a tremendous training camp.
Right.
I want to see him ball out in the preseason. I think he makes the 53. Like an early on prediction here,
first.
I think he makes the 53-man roster because of all the intangibles he brings to the table. Look, he's 27 years old. That don't matter. He's out there, big body, big catch radius, very, very disciplined, and quarterbacks went after him several times yesterday. So they've obviously developed a little bit of trust in number 81. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
It's going to be exciting. First preseason game for the Denver Broncos coming up this Sunday against the Indianapolis Colts. Be sure to check out milehighsports.com for all of your coverage, not just of the Broncos. We've got the Nuggets, we've got the Rockies, we've got the Avalanche, but our guy Cody Rourke is going to have you taken care of on the Broncos side of things at milehighsports.com. And debuting this weekend, the Locked On Broncos postcast, where you can find on the standard audio feed of the Locked On Broncos podcast. But if you want to watch me talking about the Broncos after the game, make sure to subscribe to the Locked On Sports Denver YouTube channel.
And I will say this, Anilo's postcast goes up immediately after the game ends, and then you'll get myself a little bit later on in the evening recapping, breaking it down. So, a lot of exciting pieces there. Make sure you check it out. Locked On Sports Denver.
It'll be a good time. All right, Cody Rourke, get out to work, and milehighsports.com for all of your Broncos coverage. We'll see how this preseason game shakes out.
Welcome back to the show. Thanks to Anilo and Cody for breaking all that down. We are live at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit. I had to sneak it in the one time because there's signs all over me that say it. Out at Dove Valley, the Broncos wrapping up their practice. They had some situational drills. Bo Nix looking pretty sharp in a lot of those as well. The Broncos now going old school. If you ever played any sport in high school, now they're just running back and forth, doing the old, we used to call them suicides, the back and forth, the sprints. You got to go halfway and then back, and then 3/4 of the way and then back, and then all the way back. Just conditioning, which is still important. Not as important as it used to be when guys used to come into camp out of shape 30, 40 years ago. But obviously, you still want to make sure everyone's good to go. Broncos with a brisk practice today.
Yeah, much better to do that conditioning today than on the hot days that
Absolutely.
we've had over these couple weeks.
And look, I'm not introducing our producer, Danny Bailey, who finally, for the first time, appears on camera on the show. So welcome, finally, Danny. But get a little news for you here, by the way. Caden Stearns, who was waived by the Broncos a couple of days ago after they weren't able to trade him, that kind of shocked a lot of people. And Stearns ends up getting picked up off of waivers by the Carolina Panthers, who then waive him today after he fails his physical with the Panthers. He obviously passed his physical with the Broncos to get here into camp, but when the Broncos moved on from him, does not pass the physical with the Panthers. So Caden Stearns still looking. But again, that's one of those things where you and I were talking about it at the break, Danny, that not everything gets entirely revealed. We know that Caden Stearns has had significant injury history. He only had 5 games last year, and it's been a challenge. And at certain points in time, and different teams have different levels of what they accept in a physical or not. Not every team, certain teams are a little more, they give you a little more leeway. Certain teams give less. But the idea that now all of a sudden, I think it makes sense for fans looking at Caden Stearns' situation. The Broncos looked at it. They felt they had at least okay safety depth. It is still a concern, but they must have taken a look at it and said that we just don't think that Caden Stearns can help us this much this year. Injuries are too much of a concern, and we'd rather go another direction. There are a lot of safeties available in free agency still that are out there. Justin Simmons, one of them. He visited with the Saints, not coming back to the Broncos, but if a player of Justin Simmons' caliber is still out there, there are guys that can help you. So the Broncos felt comfortable with that, and I think the Panthers waiving Stearns because his physical probably is enough to look at the Broncos' choice there a couple days ago, and I think that shot goes away. Goes, oh, well, now I know what Sean Payton and company were thinking.
Absolutely, and it stinks for Caden Stearns. He gets it. He's a professional. He knows that it's not necessarily going to be smooth sailing in an NFL career, but I'm kind of happy that he doesn't have to suffer through being a Carolina Panther because it probably isn't going to be a whole lot of fun to play for that organization this year. Like I would imagine it wasn't a lot of fun last year. But yeah, I thought it was going to be Caden Stearns and PJ Locke were going to be Broncos safeties for like the next couple years. So
I think they wanted.
We'll see how it shakes out. I think especially the ascension of JL Skinner, which you guys talked about a lot yesterday, and then just bringing in more guys from outside the organization as well. So I'm excited to watch that safety group on Sunday and see what we get out of especially the younger guys. But yeah, tough for Caden Stearns, and we'll see where he gets another tryout, because I'm sure there's more teams looking for him.
Oh, certainly. We're talking about a guy that at one point was the top safety in the country in the high school ranks when he went to Texas. So that we know about the raw ability. It's just the injury situation. That's all it is. It's bad luck. It's injuries. So hopefully he gets better, has an opportunity to continue his career, because he's a talented guy and he's worked through a lot and he's very easy to root for. So hopefully things work out for Caden Stearns. But this, I think, clarifies the move for the Broncos that fans probably had questions about, and makes perfect sense. But you're right. The safety group's one of the ones that you want to look at in this preseason opener against the Indianapolis Colts as the Broncos huddle up to wrap up their practice. That's one of them. We talked about the tight ends, obviously. But the best part of training camp going forward that I've seen is that almost every single practice, the defensive line has been consistently good, and the offensive line, for the most part, looks steady. I don't think it's a top 10 offensive line. I think it's somewhere in that middle third, but it is steady. And the fact that 4 of the 5 starters are returning gives you the idea that with a little bit more familiarity, that could get better in year 2 with Powers and McGlinchey. Quinn Miners obviously has his new deal, getting a new center. Told you really about a week ago that was likely to be Luke Wattenberg. Nothing seems to have changed. Matter of fact, that seems to be solidifying, but something to look for. But again, watching the Broncos, as we heard from Eric Goodman talk about earlier, focus on being a team that is built from the line of scrimmage out, and the toughness in the trenches, and realizing that's the way to build a team. I get it. It's an old school approach. But if you don't think that newer teams utilize it, you're mistaken. Think of the Kansas City Chiefs a couple years ago when they lost in the Super Bowl, and Patrick Mahomes was running for his life on every play. Look at what Kansas City did. They invested all of their draft picks, basically, their free agency money. They overhauled their entire offensive line in 1 year because they realized, okay, we had tried to push it, but even Patrick Mahomes can only take you so far. Quarterbacks can't help you when they're scrambling for their lives, when they're on their back. So it's still the right move. And even the best teams who have the most high-tech, great passing offenses in the world, you have to protect the quarterback. So offensive line, that is the key to it on the offensive side. Defensive line the other way. The Broncos don't have a no-fly zone anymore. You talked about the safety position, Danny, and how that has to get better. You can do it 2 different ways. You can go the no-fly zone. You remember these guys, a couple of years back did pretty well. It meant that if you didn't have the best pass rush, you still had a bit of a cushion.
Oh, yeah.
But now the Broncos don't have that. Pat Surtain is an outstanding cornerback, probably the best technician in the league. We'll see if he can get a few more interceptions added to that. But the rest of it, there are some question marks. Levi Wallace is hurt. He will probably miss this game. We know that Brandon Jones is hurt, both of them with hamstring. Almost will certainly miss this game. They're your projected starters at this point. Wallace has looked pretty good, and he's a veteran. But the way you can help them is by having a better, consistent pass rush and doing it preferably without a blitz. So the fact that the defensive line has looked so good day in and day out, probably, I would say, from the first day of camp until now, the best unit on the team, and the offensive line continues to solidify, that's good. But the other part that's intriguing, when Anilo was getting it, Devon Vele makes a great catch out here right in front of us in the end zone. This wide receiver room is deep. We've talked about that with Cody Rourke. But talent has to turn into production.
Yep.
And the Broncos can say we have 5, 6 really talented wide receivers, but they've got to get it done. And one of the questions I have, and I'm curious and looking for this in the game on Sunday, Marvin Mims out here at camp has still not become a major part of the receiving in the offense. It seems as if the Broncos, for whatever reason, have a tough time working him in and using him consistently. And that may be a thing that may be coming this season, because at any point last year, they could have worked Marvin Mims in.
And that was a weekly refrain
And
from Sean Payton. That
Right.
We got to find a way to get Mims in. We got to find a way.
Sandy Clough would go over it week after week with the snap count going. He was only in on 21% of the offensive snaps every
That's not
single
gonna
week.
do
Sandy
it.
was breaking it down. But who's in charge of that? John Payton.
Yep.
So if Sean Payton, you can make the reasonable assumption if Mims is not getting in a lot of receiving formations, it's because Sean Payton doesn't want him there for whatever reason, matchups, anything like that. Keep that in mind. I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think that the way that special teams are changing, the kickoff is changing. You have an all-pro returner at punts and kicks. It may very well be that Mims' biggest value to the Broncos isn't as a receiver. You added a guy with speed in Troy Franklin. It might be as a return man. That may be part of what the Broncos are doing right now. Because out here at camp, I can also say that while there's been a lot of good competition at receiver, returner, not so much. They have not been able to find a lot of consistency behind Marvin Mims. A lot of drops there. Jaleel McLaughlin on the kickoffs looking like a pretty reliable option, but otherwise they haven't found an awful lot. And it may be that Peyton sees the same thing and decides that Mims is going to be our weapon as a special teamer. And the league doesn't have very many of those guys. So that may actually be a good move for a Broncos team that's going to have to win games on the margins. I get it. Special teams out of the three phases is the one that decides the fewest games, but every once in a while it does. And from time to time, if you have an advantage there, that might be enough to steal the Broncos a win or two they might not otherwise get.
Absolutely.
Were they to do that, well, that's fine. That's a good argument okay, that's Mims is our Devin Hester. That's his role. That's what we're using him as. If you remember, you went to the Hall of Fame, last weekend. You remember a lot of the time they used him at times in defense. They used him as times a running back or wide receiver. But as his career went on, they kind of stopped doing that. They're like, why are we getting away from what he does best? Let's just have him return kicks. That might be Marvin Mims' future, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Not a bad thing at all. And then you still have him if you need to give somebody else a blow on offense and he runs out to run a couple routes.
Right. And he can provide that deception either as a decoy running those fly routes in which you still have to cover him, obviously. And maybe you're not even intending to throw it to him, but you're trying to peel a cornerback off in some way. That's a possibility. But I think Sean Payton, the Mims part is fascinating to me because there's always saying one thing, that we've got to use him more, but the guy in charge of using him more isn't using him more. So I think you have to look at that too.
Yeah.
So these are the parts that become kind of fascinating when you get into preseason. But the Broncos wrapping up now, the rookies carrying the pads off. Believe me, it's totally fine if Bo Nix carries Jared Stidham and Zach Wilson's pads. It's not going to hurt him, I promise. Don't worry about that. And Bo Nix says, I'm looking at him right now, scooping him up on his way. That's what happens when you're a rookie. It's not that big a deal, and he'll be QB1 soon enough. We're not going to be out of practice. The Broncos practices over the next few days will be closed. We'll be back out. Fans can't come. Media can't come. They're going to be looking for pregame against the Colts and then a couple post-game practices. They'll put that together. We'll be back out here on Wednesday live from Broncos camp. But, of course, we'll be back at it tomorrow. We'll keep that same camp time for you, 11 a.m. Team coverage today. Tremendous job by everyone at Miles Sports. This guy, first and foremost, nothing happens without Danny Bailey. So thanks. You deserve the moment.
Thank you.
You deserve the moment. He got the close-up. We got to make him do it a little bit more often. But thanks to Anilo Piro, Cody Rourke, of course, is out here every day. Eric Goodman had a chance to break things down. If you missed any part of it and you want Eric Goodman's Paxton Lynch story, believe me. If you're watching on YouTube, you just slide back and find it. But you can also subscribe, and we'll give you everything that we're doing every single day. So everyone who watches it that way and listens to it that way, we really appreciate it. So for everyone here at Miles Sports, I'm Sean Drotar. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, 11 a.m. Catch you then.